Good evening and welcome to Transition Talks Tuesdays. My name is Tim Markle. I'm director of the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs. Transition Talks Tuesday is a partnership with the Madison Metropolitan School District, and we are really excited tonight to have Jennifer Spring from the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, also known as DVR. So you'll hear that probably a couple times tonight. Jennifer's going to talk about how DVR helps support students in preparing to work, finding work, supporting them at work. As we know, employment matters, and we want to make sure that we do everything we can to help our students, our families, our children to gain employment that is going to be meaningful to them and help them to achieve their best life. So thank you very much, Jennifer, for being here.
Thank you. All right, let me just share the PowerPoint here. Great. All right, is that good? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so like Tim said, I am a vocational rehabilitation counselor with the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, or DVR. So today, what we're going to cover is understanding DVR's process for referrals and applications, the eligibility criteria, how we work with youth in transition, and then sharing some tools and best practices for successful transition, and then of course answer any questions that anyone has for me. So what is DVR? So DVR is the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. So we are a state agency under the umbrella of Department of Workforce Development. And our big focus is employment and making sure people have services they need to be successful in employment and develop those skills. We are funded partially federally and state funded. So you can see the breakdowns there. So it's mostly federally funded, but we do have some state funding. And again, our mission is to assist individuals with disabilities in obtaining, maintaining, or improving their employment. So we are an eligibility-based program, so there is a referral and application process. So for students, in general, we always get when should a student apply. So kind of our rule of thumb is that students with a disability should apply 2 years before completing high school. So if that's someone in their traditional 4 years of school, we're looking for like that beginning of their junior year. And then if it's someone who is in their, who's going to continue to 21, then we recommend around senior year applying to DVR. And you can apply sooner. That's certainly definitely a possibility if you want to apply sooner, if a student is ready to work or has ambitions to gain some work skills. We do accept younger students, but they at least have to be 14, so able to get a work permit. So anyone younger wouldn't be a good fit. Just kind of, oh, sorry, that went too fast. For those under 18 or who have a legal guardian, we do want the guardian to be present if possible, and they do have to sign all documents on the application or referral. And you can do the referral online, by mail, or in person. So every school has a DVR liaison. So there, and further in the presentation, there will be a link to a resource where you can find who your liaison would be for that high school. So you can reach out to them directly to get an application as well, or case managers at the school usually know too. So who's eligible for DVR? So to be eligible for services, you do have to have a documented disability, medical or psychological disability that presents a barrier to employment and requires DVR services. So really the first step, especially with students, is for the DVR counselor who works with that school, is they meet with them and we do a intake appointment, and we gather the documentation that we need. We will discuss the disability. We go through 7 functional areas, which I'll go through in a second. And we also try to use any existing information like IEPs, functional screens, medical records, you know, in order to make our eligibility determination. So a lot of times oh, sorry, go ahead, Tim.
So we did have a question in chat. Could
Yep.
you just clarify for us, please,
Yep.
Jennifer? The application for DVR services, does that apply to juniors and seniors? Or clarify if the students are staying in school until 21, should they apply at age 19? If you could just clarify that.
Yeah, so if a student is staying to 21, then we usually like to see the application come in sometime their senior year. So usually a lot of people will kind of pair it with when they're applying for like the ADRC long-term supports. So like that 17 and a half, 18 is usually when case managers will also help with getting us set with DVR as well. So I would say sometime in the senior year is a good rule of thumb. We have accepted students younger than that who stay till 21. The issue with that right now is more vendor capacity to provide supports, but it is possible. So if you do think maybe your student is ready earlier, you can reach out to your counselor to see if it's appropriate, but definitely by that senior year is when we want to see those applications. All right. Yeah, so in that intake appointment, like I said, we do try to gather existing information. IEPs are very helpful, neuropsychs, anything that you've done in the past. There are a few times where the IEP will not have a diagnosis that we can accept, that the school essentially can't diagnose. That usually is around like mental health diagnosis. So we wanted to see like maybe a psychologist or psychiatrist, but your counselor will, you know, make sure we have the documentation that we need. If there isn't any documentation of disability, we can refer out to providers to get additional assessments done so that we can get that documentation for eligibility. Right. So part of the intake process and what we do in this whole eligibility is an order of selection. So the order of selection is we evaluate 7 different functional areas that relate to work, and we talk about how the diagnosis and disability could affect these different areas. So when you're going through that intake with your counselor, each of these areas will be discussed to help with that eligibility process. And then it also helps us to determine if there's a wait list, where that student would go on a wait list. So we have 3 different categories with DVR. Category 1 is our most significant disability. So that would be people who have 4 or more barriers in one of these 7 areas. And then our category 2 is if there's 1 to 3 barriers. And then our category 3 is if there's a disability, but there's not really any barriers in these 7 areas. Currently, there is not a wait list for category 1 or 2. So if a student has a barrier in at least one of these areas, then they can get served from DVR right away. Our category 3 does have a wait list. It's rare that someone would get placed on that, but it is revisited yearly or annually or as needed. So like right now, we're pretty low on referrals. So that category 3 is being opened up. So people are getting served currently on there. But that is right now the only wait list we have. It could change in the future, but right now I've been here 6 years and we've always had category 1 and 2 open. So once we, you know, gather all the information from the 7 areas and the documentation, that's when we determine the eligibility. Once someone is found eligible, then the next step in the process is to develop the IPE, or the Individualized Plan for Employment. It does get confusing because we use the same letters as the IEP. But this is all based on employment, not education. So this employment plan is to help us determine what the employment goal is. With high school students, we have a lot of flexibility because we focus on both short-term employment goals and long-term employment goals. So short-term, if let's say we get a junior who wants their first part-time job, or they, just want to do some pre-employment trainings to gain some soft skills. Those are things that we can help with. And then we can also help prepare for what's going to happen after high school. So whether that's going straight into the workforce, if that's going on for more schooling or training, if that looks like you're in the 1821 program and we're developing a plan of services for after high school in the adult world, whatever that looks like, we help prepare for that while also focusing on gaining and developing those skills, employment skills, while you're in high school too. So the IPE lays out those employment goals, and then they are individualized. So then we also develop our service plan according to the needs of the student and the goal, and how we're going to get there and what we need to get there. So some key practices for transition. So we do ask that in this process that you can invite DVR to IEPs, just to get kind of an intro to DVR, or any other types of meetings that you're having with students. We've been invited to a lot of different team meetings just to explain what DVR is, see if it's appropriate for the student, if they're considering to apply. So you don't have to apply to meet with a DVR representative. If it's just a student you think that could be appropriate, or maybe they're ready to start exploring the world of work, you can invite your DVR counselor for that school just to give, basic information and then decide from there. So we really highly encourage that. So we do offer employment planning consultation through DVR. So again, if you have a student who's interested, if we're not sure if it's, we're ready yet, or maybe we are ready, we can kind of come up with a plan. Sometimes we do get applicants to apply maybe earlier than they're ready for, and we can walk through that and, come up with a timeline, things of that nature. So, and then we do schedule and attend regular meetings with the high school. So especially those 18 to 21-year-old students, we try and attend all of the IEPs or monthly meetings that happen, so that we're all on the same page. Okay. So at the beginning of each school year, we try and schedule a meeting with DVR teachers or other special education staff, or just school staff, just to provide updates about DVR, and share any changes that have happened. I've done that also with other agencies, not just schools. So DVR does change frequently as far as our processes and how things work. So we like to keep everyone updated. And then we also, attend things like this, like transition talks or parent-teacher conferences, transition fairs, or other similar events. Yep, Tim.
So I have a parent who's wondering, this all sounds really good for her
Yep.
student, but she's kind of struggling with her school.
Okay.
Won't refer to DVR.
Okay.
Do you have any suggestions for them?
Yeah, the school does not have to be the one to refer a student. You can self-refer. I would recommend either you can apply online, so you can go online and fill out the online referral. And then there is a section that says like what school you go to, and that indicates to the people who process the referrals to assign it to the DVR counselor assigned to that school. So you never have to wait for your school to be like, yeah, this is a great time. Like, it's completely, your student, if you're a parent and you feel like they're ready, you can definitely reach out directly to DVR and get the process started. That happens frequently. So I think the online referral is probably the easiest, or you could call DVR directly and ask who the liaison is for that school, and they can direct you to them and they can help you with the application process as well. All right. So some other, just to give a better idea of like some of the services that we provide. So we do job exploration counseling. So again, once we know like the goals of the student, there are services we have just to kind of get out there, explore different work experiences like job shadows, internships. We do have like vocational testing to maybe narrow down a job goal. So we have a lot of different exploration activities, and we do work with the schools as well who provides that, especially in that 1821 program. Work-based learning experiences, so that's going to be actually on the job. Like I was talking about earlier, sometimes a student just wants maybe a part-time job at a grocery store or in food service or something like that. So we do help with like the application process, connecting to a vocational agency to help with like coaching on the job, being like the in between the employer and the student. So that work-based learning experiences, those are going to be those, maybe not my long-term career goal, but a job to help me, gain some soft skills and work experience. We do counseling on the comprehensive transition or post-secondary goals and enrollment opportunities. So again, whether your student's going into the 1821 program and how we coordinate that with all the adult agencies, or if your student is interested in going to college or a trade, like we kind of talk about what that looks like and opportunities out there for that student. We do have work-based readiness training to develop social and independent living skills. They are all related to work. So when we say independent living skills, we don't mean like cooking, for example, but maybe bus training, learning the bus routes to get to and from work, or how to deal with conflict at work, or just like how to have a job, like when is it appropriate to be on my phone, work attire. So all of those things that, maybe don't come instinctually to students who haven't worked before, we do have trainings to help develop those types of skills. And then we do have instruction on self-advocacy. So that includes like financial literacy, learning more about your disability and advocating for any accommodations or things you may need on the job. So a lot of different readiness trainings we have as well to kind of help with this whole transition process from a high school student into the adult working world. All right. Comparable benefits, we just like mentioned this briefly. We do look at other resources in the community before we fund services, like examples, financial aid. So if you have a student who's going on to college or a training program, we do look at the financial aid and how we can work with that. Transit services, libraries, computer labs. A lot of this for at least high school students is between the schools and DVR, long-term support providers and funders. We kind of just talk about who's going to provide what and how that all works. So we kind of work as a team to determine where those services are coming from. So our end goal with DVR is integrated employment. So integrated employment is, a setting that enables an individual to interact with, and of course my little screen is in front there, with persons without developmental disabilities to the fullest extent possible. So we really want to see inclusive environments. All of our consumers, we want to see making minimum wage or more. We've really gotten away from some of the older models of like piecework or those sheltered workshop type settings. So we really want it to be an integrated, competitive work environment. So we do not, I get this question a lot, we do not support like volunteer sites, for example. So if your student is volunteering, that's not, we wouldn't be able to like fund job coaching at a volunteer site. It does have to be a paid, integrated, competitive work setting. And that's our goal for everyone that we work with. Closure with DVR. So DVR is considered a short-term service. I always remind people of that, but when you are referring a student, short-term could be 8-9 years. So eventually DVR will close a case successfully is our hope. And what that looks like for us is that an individual has maintained employment for a minimum of 90 days. That can look different depending on the cases, like for supported employment or customized employment. So that 90-day time frame, it begins after a student's funding transitions to long-term support. So if you have a student who is in like the 1821 program, we usually start funding a vocational agency who is with them, like a job coach, someone who, you know, helps them complete tasks, maybe does some personal cares, whatever that looks like for the student. We usually start cross-training and funding that agency the last month or two of school. And then we then transition to long-term funding once stability is reached. And that is different for everyone, but it's usually about 3 months of coaching that DVR will fund before it transitions to that long-term funder. So it's a little bit of a different process for those students who need ongoing coaching to keep a job. Once we close a case, you can always reapply. So it's really important to know that if you have a student who works with DVR, we closed successfully, things were great, maybe 6 months later, 10 years later, they lose their job, want a better job, want to switch careers completely, and DVR would be helpful again. A student can always reapply, or an adult in that case can always reapply throughout their life. So there's no limit to the amount of times you can reapply for DVR services. So we are short-term, but you can always come back if needed. So we do have a START team. I'm actually on the START team. So that's our statewide transition action and resource team. There's a lot of information on the START team website. There's also, if you go on there, there's the transition action guide where it kind of breaks down the roles of like DVR, the school, long-term funders. So there's a lot of great information on there. And then also there's the link to that transition liaison list I was mentioning. So if you open that, we try to keep it as up to date as possible, but it lists every school in the state that has a DVR counselor and who that counselor is with their contact information. So it's really helpful when you are trying to look for your DVR liaison. So just some good resources to have. And then there's questions. And just so everyone knows, I am the liaison for Memorial High School and West High School and Wisconsin Heights. So just so you guys know where I'm from. But are there any questions that we have?
Hey, Jennifer, this is Tim. Could you explain a little bit? I know that sometimes families can get confused because they meet DVR and they have a DVR counselor, and that's all well and good. And then they end up at a supported employment agency.
Yep.
And they get confused as to whether they're still being followed by DVR or if DVR has passed them off. So could you explain that process a little bit for us?
Yeah, so DVR, we are a funding source. So we fund like the supported employment agency. So it's very likely that your DVR case is still open, but maybe we're a little bit more behind the scenes funding the services. And then your direct contact is that supported employment agency. So once, and it works differently depending on the individual, but once a supported employment agency is in place, they usually end up being your main contact as far as like, you know, anything that would come up on the job, any issues. But if there is something that was needed, let's say you need some assistive technology while we're on the job, like we're noticing that the student needs something to make them more successful, then you would come back to like your DVR counselor and then maybe we can fund that technology to be successful on the job. So we're really overseeing the whole process of that supported employment agency, making sure they're providing the service that is needed for the student to be successful on the job, like that job coaching. They report to us monthly. We get monthly reports. They also are in pretty frequent communication with us through email as well. And you should also be hearing from your DVR counselor at least once a month. So we are supposed to reach out every 30 days, or you reach out to us just to give an update. And we will always let you know before we close a case too. So we always discuss that. So if we are reaching a point where stability is reached, we're transitioned the funding to IRIS or family care or the long-term provider, we would reach out and be like, okay, this is the time we close DVR case. So if you haven't heard from your DVR counselor and you're not sure, I would recommend asking your main contact at the supported employment agency, because they may know, like, oh yeah, I've been in contact with them. Or you can call our office and be like, hey, I haven't heard from our counselor. Is things still going correctly? But generally you should hear from us once a month, and we are overseeing how things are going with that agency too, and funding those services that you're getting on the job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions, you can unmute and I will call on you, or you can put it in the chat box and I'm more than happy to relay your questions to Jennifer. I asked the first question to give you all time to think of the next question. So please feel free to unmute or put your question into the chat box. I'm looking over the notes from previous previous presentations that we've had from DVR, and everything seems to be, I think you hit it all. We did have somebody who talked a little bit about the DVR toolkits. So we do have a question about, if there's a younger student who wants skills or interest assessments, possibly in anticipation for like a part-time summer job, but mostly just sort of a pre-employment, going through what are their skills, what are their interests. Would that be best served through DVR or through their school?
I mean, so it really, it depends. So, if they are interested in a part-time job, I would definitely recommend applying to DVR if you think they'll need any supports on a job, whether that be the application process itself or job coaching. When it comes to like the interest part and like really exploring, the school can do some assessments and kind of help maybe narrow the scope. But when it comes to like actually like on the job exploration, so let's say, okay, the school has helped, with this interest inventory, and it shows that the student has an interest in, I don't know, food service, for example. And we want some, actual hands-on experience or seeing that type of job, then DVR can then set up like a job shadow or an internship or something of that nature. So we do partner a lot with the school. So the school can do a lot of those types of assessments. But then DVR can also like almost like supplement like what they've done, or like give more comprehensive like services that maybe the school can't provide, like a cab ride to a job shadow too, or getting actually out there and looking at a job. So I guess the answer would be we both can do it, and we can also work together to do it too.
Would that be covered? I keep hearing this WIOA
Yeah.
school DVR partnerships. Is that, if parents hear WIOA, that's probably what we're talking about, is those pre-employment
Yeah.
services?
Yep. So WIOA is exactly what that is. So it's like this pre-employment services that there's a big push for all of these different agencies to provide together. So like making it more of a a team effort versus, I have this service, I have this service, I have this service. We kind of all want to collaborate together to provide these pre-employment services, in the hope that once a student is an adult and they're in the adult world, they've had all this preparation and, they can be successful and maybe not need to come back to DVR as much, or, they gain a lot of these skills before they enter the adult world.
And to clarify, so if the student is younger, even sophomore,
Yep.
and the school is sitting there going, we know at 14 we're supposed to be doing all this according to the law, but we don't feel like it. Can the parents reach out to DVR and try to get this jump start on employment?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. That happens frequently. And, sometimes there's new case managers, right? Or, I know right now with the schools, there's turnover, or, maybe they're not just as familiar with DVR, which definitely does happen. So if you are a parent who knows about DVR, you do not need like the permission or the guidance of the school. You can do it all on your own. And again, apply online or call DVR directly to learn who your counselor is, and you can get that process started. That happens frequently. So at any point, if your student has expressed interest of being ready to explore work in any sort of capacity, then yes, you can apply to DVR online or by contacting us.
Other questions that people might have tonight? And all right, would applying now be too late for a student to get help with the summer job for this coming summer? Is this a good time frame to start to begin that process?
Yeah, this is a great time, especially if you have interest in the summer. I know I mentioned briefly before vendor capacity. So our vocation, how it works is we contract with different agencies to provide the services that we fund. So right now, our vocational agencies, who really are the ones that are on the ground, like they're helping with the applications, they're making employer connections, they're the ones providing the coaching. We are seeing some capacity issues, so like wait list. So the sooner, like in the school year, you get a student signed up, the more time we have to either be on a wait list to help find that summer job, or explore other services that we can do right now. So this is a really great time to apply, or shortly after winter break. If you have a senior who is going to need DVR services and they're going to graduate, please have them apply right now. Because it does happen that we get a huge influx of seniors like a couple months before they graduate, and then we have had none of that time to do our job readiness and explorations and make sure that they're really have a good goal that they're going to be successful with after high school. So we want, that's why we do recommend those 2 years before exit, because we really want to capture those seniors like a year before they actually graduate. So that's one thing I really want to press is, if you do have a senior, do not wait until a month or two before school ends for them. If it's someone continuing to the 1821 program, that's perfectly fine. It's just for those seniors who would be graduating. We would want to see them now if possible.
Any other questions? It seems every time I say that and then I get ready to close, a question pops up. Can you talk a little bit more about your transportation training, like bus training, and how to use the bus? How you kind of help families or students, and is that available as a pre-employment service? Or do they have to be enrolled to have a job to be able to get that service?
They don't have to have a job. You do have to have an open DVR file for bus training. But we can do bus training like in preparation to find employment too. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I have a job, how am I going to get to and from school? Our bus training, it depends on the agency providing it, to be honest, of what exactly that looks like. But most agencies, what they will do is they'll start with like using the app on a phone, like, you know, giving like a tutorial on how to use that app for route planning. They do ride along with students to, you know, teach them the routes. They will follow along in a bus eventually and then try to do an independent route. So it's kind of like a fading process. And it really depends on the student too and their needs as far as like how many hours of bus training will do, or you know, what that actually looks like, because you know, it really is dependent on the needs. But in general, that bus training, it can happen before a job, and it's really getting familiar with the app, how to plan your route, and then doing some practice runs. And then once you get a job or the student gets a job, we can always do bus like training again, or a couple hours to like train on that specific route as well. So we really highly encourage, you know, independence with transportation, because I'm sure all of us know transportation options are few and far between in a lot of ways. So we try and make sure students can be as independent as possible so they can keep their job.
I have a question. Would that same training be done at school if the child's in the 18 to 21 program?
Yep. So the 1821 program does do bus training. Often, I think that's part of, you know, transportation is part of their main goals too, especially when we're preparing for transition, like really narrowing down what transportation will look like, whether they can take the public bus system or if they're going to need specialized transportation. So yeah, the school should be working on that if it's appropriate for their student. And then of course, you know, we can always supplement with our services too, or help out if there's not staff or something that can help the student in that program. Hopefully that's the correct answer. Sheena, I know I said I want to ask you any questions, but I think that's correct.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
And just because I love self-advocates that are out there, I also put into the link an organization around Madison called Transit to Go, which is run by a self-advocate that provides orientation, different transportation services as well. So if you think your youth may respond better to another youth who has a disability, talk to them about transportation issues, please feel free to contact Abby. And no, I don't know her fee schedule, charges, or anything like that. I just know that I know her through the Waysman Center. Other questions? I am not seeing anybody come off mute. I'm not seeing anything added to the chat. So Jennifer, thank you so much for being here. Everybody don't go anywhere. Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Don't go, don't go, don't go. In the chat, you will have a link to a very short feedback form so that we can report whether this is a benefit to the Madison Metropolitan School District. And we just need to know whether this was helpful or not. So if you could take a little bit of time, and if as you are on here, just go ahead and link off to there. It really is short. It will also be part of the resource sheet that we send out. So thank you all so much for being here, Jennifer. Thank you for bringing your expertise, and I hope everybody has a fantastic night.
Thank you.